Today I thought I would run through with you how I'm going to install the Chinese heater. So the Chinese heater is not very large. It is 400 millimeters in length by 150 millimeters each side, height and width. In the box comes this heat plate. This heat plate goes over all the parts that are combustible. So this is the inlet valve or the inlet manifold, which sucks air from outside inside to the combustion chamber and allow it to work the engine. This is the exhaust pipe, which we all know how an exhaust pipe works. This is the fuel pipe, which gives it fuel to run. People put this on the floor and it will sit that way on the floor. So people put that on the floor, drill 2 holes, push this through the floor and then connect it all up. To me, that is a little bit dangerous because this is going to come in contact with your insulation. Now, if you've used Celotex or any of that plastic fiber, this could be detrimental to that because it will melt the fiber. It could even melt the Celotex or burn the Celotex. So I've opted for something like this. This is 3 millimeters stainless steel, handmade, and it's exact same template to the Chinese heater. This is 125 millimeters in diameter, so you need a 125 millimeter hole saw, which I bought from Screwfix, and I am going to put that through the floor, and that means that my insulation, 40 mils of it, will only come in contact with the outside of this 3 millimeter stainless steel housing or manifold. I have bought these from Halfords. They are lock nuts. The bolts that come with this are just standard nuts, and because this is going to be on the outside of the van, I want to know that they are going to be secure. Yes, it is more difficult working in this area with the flue, but I think it's worth going through the hassle. Okay, so those 4 screws now are now tight. I can pick this up, turn it around, and that's how it's going to sit, but through the floor. Okay, so now that this is done, we now need to connect this exhaust pipe onto there. We take this clip and we put it on like that. And again, this is pretty difficult. Okay, so as you can see, this has got a nut on it, rather than it's also got a space for a screw, so you could screw it in. But because of this flue, it does make things a little bit more difficult initially. But remember, once this is done, this is done. So make sure it's on completely. This is down to, I like to think that that nut is flush with the bottom of the flue, and then I'm just going to tighten this. You want to tighten it so that it's tight enough to be picked up on. So we can pick that up just fine. Now this pipe is very difficult to bend, so I'm going to bend it slightly forward so that when I put it through the hole, I can slide it in. This pipe is easier to bend, so this is for the air intake. So I'm just going to stretch this a little bit. Alright, so I'm going to put this one on this way with the Jubilee clip. So that's done now. We just got the last bit now to do, which is the fuel pipe. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this tube, and this tube comes with, and I just want to square off the ends nicely, and then I'm going to fold it in half because I need 4. So that's roughly half there, and then half again. This black tube goes onto this fuel one. This one goes on the middle. So I'll need a clip here to clip on there, and a clip here to clip on there. If I put this flush with the manifold and then just measure, that's how far that needs to go onto that tube there. So if I just take a pen now and put a mark saying that's the length of that, and then there is a little bit of a lip, so the lip will be there. So if I put the bracket around about there, it'll work. This, on the other hand, is going to go in here as far as possible, no further than there. So again, we'll put a mark on it. And this tubing here softens in water a little bit, hot water. So I'm just getting some hot water done. I've got an old coffee tin here, I'm just going to use that. So this is some hot water. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 10. I've got these things, which are little rings with ears on. As you can see now, this slides in pretty easily. Excellent. I can bring this on now, and this is 9 to 11 millimeters. So if I can go to there, and then you just use these cutters and you put it in place and squeeze the ear down. Then you go to the other side and you squeeze the ear down. And then that is going nowhere. Now to put the other side on, we've got these things that are like little clips. You stick that over, put this back in the water just to heat it up, shake out the water, and then push it onto, if we just push it onto the fuel pipe all the way down to the bottom. Then we use the long nose pliers to put the ear down, and then what I like to do is just stick them in and open them out, and then just so that I know that it's tight. So that now is the fuel pipe. We got this, which needs to go on, and this, if you open this up, it's just basically to stop the bugs coming in but allow the air in. So we close that up, stick this in, make sure that that's on nice and tightly without kinking it, and then just use some cable ties. This doesn't get hot and it's going to be away from the exhaust pipe. I like to put 2 cable ties, one squeezing that way and then another squeezing this way. That's the same way, squeezing this way. Okay, so there's the hole that I've already cut out with the hole saw from Screwfix. It is the only place I could find that goes through the floor without catching any cables underneath. I will show you from underneath shortly. But I've gone through, I have put on some hammerite there to stop it from rusting now. And then we are going to insert the heater now that we've done all this fitting. So we can now put this through the hole, including the fuel filter. And then this sits nicely on the floor, totally protected, and it just needs 4 screws in the bottom. We're now just going to make sure that this is square to the floor. That's it. And then screw that into the floor. Just double check that it's square. It's moved a little bit. That's better. And that's now firmly put into the floor. I can bring the stool that I've made in and that should not touch. So I can move that right over to there, which I'm not going to. I want it over there, but it also means that I can put a hole at the back and draw air from the cab area. So if I take you back now, you can see that that's the chair there. I've got these, remember these from when I put the roof racks in? They're the self-tapping, self-drilling screws. So I'm just going to put one in there. Okay, so that's in. Not the exhaust, the inlet. That's going to rattle a bit there, so luckily I've got one more. Unfortunately, they only come with two. The reason I've got one is because I only used one on my friend's cabin. Okay, that's going nowhere. Let me show you. Okay, so that's the air pipe. It's now firmly in place, and the exhaust pipe going backwards, and that means that the air pipe over there is a long way away from the exhaust pipe, which will go over here. This is the fuel pipe, which I'm going to run forward into the footwell, and that's where I'll fit the filter. So this here tapped into the reverse light. This green light goes back up to the reverse camera that I have installed. So when that goes in reverse now, the camera comes on. I never filmed that one, I don't think, but this is where I tapped into it. It's a green and grey cable. So I think this is a very neat place in which to put maybe the fuel pump, which will then go back through here somehow to the fuel tank. But for now, that's a pretty solid wall to mount the fuel pump. So this is the fuel. So if I just give it a little bit of extra and then cut it off. Okay, so unfortunately this is where my battery on the microphone died, and so now you are stuck with me doing some voiceover work. There are 3 holes in the wall of this footwell. A 2-inch piece of fuel pipe, laid it parallel with the actual fuel pipe, and then put a cable tie around it. I then folded the 2-inch pipe in half and pushed it through the hole, which as it got through the hole it opened up, and then I could tie the cable tie a little bit tighter, and that kept the fuel line in place. So the next stage was to fit the fuel pump. I decided this was the best position for it, so I drilled a small pilot hole, moving to a larger hole with a larger bit, and then finally the actual size of the bit required for the riv nut. In the rubber housing of the fuel pump, there is a little metal eyelet which keeps the hole, I think it's the hole for the bolt, you know. What you can see here is that the M8 bolt did not go through with the eyelet in place. So turning it around and pushing the eyelet out with the bolt allowed me to then turn around and fit the bolt in from the front and then into the riv nut. And I think it has made it very quiet. I can hardly hear it now when it's running. I then proceeded to cut the fuel line with a sharp blade. This is just better than cutting it with side cutters or with cutters, because that squeezes it closed and you want the fuel pipe to be completely open. So cutting it with a blade is far, far better. So the next step is to get the hot water again, place the black tube into the hot water, slide it onto the tubing, and then crimp it onto the pump. Once you've crimped both sides, you can put the pump back in its housing and continue feeding the tube towards the fuel tank. So just a little bit of housekeeping. Make sure that you vacuum up all the iron filings from when you drill the hole. This will just stop rusting occurring. So this is a small aluminium tube which is wide enough to have the fuel pipe threaded through it, and all I'm going to do is push it in a channel that is under the chair towards the fuel tank. Now I'm just threading the fuel pipe into that tubing. So I don't want the fuel pipe to chafe against the metal part there, so I'm just bending it with the long nose pliers so that it's a smoother edge. You can get to the fuel tank under the chair, but I found that it would be quicker and easier, especially while filming, to remove the passenger seat. Just remove the front 2 bolts, tilt it backwards, and then slide it off the back 2 bolts. Once the chair is off, there is access to the top of the fuel tank. It's just held in place with 3 screws. Pretty simple. Remove those and you are at the top of the sender unit. It's quite dusty in there, so I just gave it a quick blow to clean it, and then there are plastic caps which slide to the left or right and then pop off. I think those go to the fuel pump. Then the next stage is the air breather pipe. It's got like a clip that you just need to squeeze together softly and it unclips, and then you can slide the breather pipe off. So this is where it all went wrong. This next part is the sender unit cover spanner, which I purchased on eBay, and it worked pretty well now that I know how to use it. So as you can see here, I'm measuring the size of the lid, and what I did was I only went to the top ridges and tightened it, and I should have gone down the entire side of the lid and then tightened it, but instead when I opened it, it sheared the top of the lid away from the bottom of the lid, leaving the bottom of the lid still in place and the top of the cover broken off. Was only £13, but a lesson learned. If you're going to get one of these spanners, you should go all the way down. At this stage, I am now angry with myself. I am covered in diesel, but I have to continue and install this fuel standpipe. Unfortunately, with my hands being covered in diesel, I didn't want to touch the camera, and so there is no footage of me drilling and installing the fuel pipe. So we now fast forward 2 days. Even though I bought one of these spanners, which was supposed to remove the sender unit pretty well, I think I was probably a bit too forceful with it and stripped the lid anyway. So I thought I would do it properly and get one of those spanners, and I didn't take any advice with regard to people hitting it with a hammer and a piece of wood, and it seems that that probably would have been a better option in hindsight. So now I have purchased and received a new one, so I'm going to install that now. I have installed the tube, and as you can see, there it is there. Unfortunately, I didn't film it because I was so angry and I just wanted to get it done. I was rushing it because I wanted to get it done before the sun went down, and yeah, I shouldn't rush things. I should just go with it and make time, make sure that it's done properly. But now it's been cold for 2 days, so I really do want to get this heater in, so I'm going to finish it now. On the home stretch. So now I'm going to install this. This is the fuel filter, and the top of it is coming from the fuel side. So that is the heater side, and this one is the fuel side. So that's that side. Now that goes round there and is going to sit in there, and again just cut that. I'm just making longer than expected loops, and the reason being is I don't want kinks. So push that loop in there, push that in there, stick this on the end, just loosely. On the newer systems, to prime, what you got to do is just push the up and down button at the same time and hold them. And as long as you hold it, that pump's going to pump. And as you can see, the fuel's coming through already. So if I just start this now, so the fuel's come all the way here, it's gone through, there's no air bubbles, the air bubbles are all gone here, so there's no air coming from the tank, which is good. So there's the pumps come on now, you can see that the pumps come on. Seems to click quietly for the first couple of seconds because it was pumping a lot faster when you're priming it. So this is the glow plug. That's being heated up now. Okay, so we've got E8, which means that there's still no fuel. So this is on startup. As you can see, it's using 112 watts, which is nearly 10 amps, which is pushing that DC12 output to the max. Well, not quite, but almost there. I can see smoke coming out of there now. So that means it's now running properly. Well, thank you for sticking around to the very end. I know it was a long one. The next one won't be as long, so I really appreciate you sticking around. If you haven't given it a thumbs up, please consider doing so. And if you haven't subscribed, consider doing that too. I am going to start doing some more videos again. Until next time, have a good one.